A fierce battle was raging in the streets, involving three fiery red monsters. According to the experts upstairs, the military had named these creatures scarlet beetles. They belonged to the insect family, boasting extremely strong defenses, powerful attacks, and highly corrosive saliva. Fortunately, tanks and armored vehicles were present on the streets. After incurring heavy losses, the military seemed to have killed the three scarlet beetles. Yet, there was no cheer of victory, no cries of despair. Everything returned to an eerie calm. From the next day, the supply of rations in the neighborhood began to dwindle sharply. The expert upstairs informed Ch.6 with concern that due to numerous attacks by the scarlet beetles across various regions, the transportation of supplies was no longer safe or normal. The military might even have to abandon the area eventually, as there were reportedly increasing numbers of these beetles emerging nearby, beyond the military's control. The experts' pessimistic prediction soon came true. About 7 to 8 days later, scarlet beetles started appearing frequently in the vicinity. With the onset of the Dark Age, people began referring to the previous era of sunlight as the Sunlight Age, and the present as the Dark Age. In the building behind Ch.6's apartment complex, it should have been deep night according to the Sunlight Age. Horrifying screams pierced the air, followed by the shrill cries of scarlet beetles. Initially, the military would come to handle such incidents, but over time, they ceased to respond. The cries of scarlet beetles could be heard intermittently from all around. Shen City was no longer a safe place, filled with hidden dangers. Ch.6 spent night after night in fear, practicing his cultivation. Soon, the first batch of military withdrawal appeared on the streets. Protected by numerous tanks and armored vehicles, a long convoy of private cars followed the military, moving slowly. The expert upstairs said that the first batches to evacuate were important figures, guarded by elite troops. However, he didn't know the exact destination, possibly a better base. A week later, the soldiers distributing food in the neighborhood had long disappeared. The security forces dwindled, and chaos ensued. The wife of the expert upstairs was almost assaulted at their door, but Ch.6 thwarted the attempt by threatening the assailant with a gun. The expert was extremely grateful to Ch.6 and revealed a secret. In 3 days, the last batch of people, protected by well-equipped elite troops, would evacuate. Due to certain reasons, the expert was temporarily added to the evacuation list, albeit at the lowest rank, but he had spots for 3 family members. Unfortunately, he had exactly 3 family members, so he couldn't include Ch.6. Ch.6 knew he wasn't eligible for special treatment from the military. 3 days later, the family on the 3rd floor, who had saved a wealthy businessman's daughter, received a spot for evacuation alongside the expert's family. Although Ch.6 believed it was his ancient book that had truly saved the woman, he didn't dare tell anyone. Besides, people might not believe him. Despite the businessman's decency, Ch.6 gave up seeking help, fearing it might bring more trouble. Unexpectedly, the 3rd day's evacuation plan was severely leaked. Even with heavy military protection, the convoy made little progress before being blocked by a large crowd of civilians, who felt abandoned by the military and were furious about the unfair treatment. Ch.6 didn't go downstairs. He was deeply worried about the scarlet beetles that could appear at any moment. He opened the small steel panel on his window and saw the streets below clogged with people. The vanguard of the military convoy had already moved several blocks ahead. From his house, he could only see the vehicles stuck behind, with the angry crowd throwing objects at the military vehicles in protest. The expert upstairs said the command center had ordered that any interference with the military's mission could be met with immediate execution by the troops without needing to report. However, when the 126th Regiment faced tens of thousands of people blocking their way, even the commanding officers dared not give the order to shoot. There were too many people, all civilians, and no one wanted to make that call. Reports were rapidly sent to the headquarters. Ch.6 heard a man's voice amplified by a loudspeaker in the distance. "Comrades. Comrades. Please listen to me. I am Chin Gang, the political commissar of the 126th Regiment. Please rest assured, the headquarters will not abandon any comrades. The military evacuation plan includes all of you. Please believe me. You're talking nonsense. Bullshit. You're all leaving. What kind of evacuation is this? They're human, and we're not? Is the People's Army an army for a few? The crowd was agitated, unmoved by Qin Gang's words. Qin Gang raised his voice, shouting, "Comrades! Please don't be deceived by some lawbreakers. The military will not abandon any of you. I, Qin Gang, am willing to stay and evacuate with the last group. Please trust me, there are still large numbers of troops defending the front lines. We're not the last batch. Evacuation must be orderly to avoid monster attacks and ensure minimal losses. Don't listen to this bastard. Why should officials and the rich go first, and we go last? Money is worthless now, it's all just paper. You don't get it. Rich people have connections. Every one of them is tied to the government. In this nepotism, we common folks are nothing. Better be eaten by bugs, damn it." The situation was extremely chaotic. The crowd showed no signs of dispersing, only growing larger. A highly tense soldier accidentally fired a shot into the air, causing the crowd to erupt. "There's been a murder. The army is killing civilians. Fight them." Qin Gang turned angrily to his subordinates and shouted, "Who fired the shot? I'll have him executed." The soldier who fired the shot was already overwhelmed by the crowd. Just as people were about to storm the military vehicles, someone screamed, "Bugs! Bugs! Monsters!" At least 50 to 60 fiery red scarlet beetles were rapidly approaching along the walls of the buildings. The entire crowd was terrified. Moments ago, they were on the brink of rioting. Now, they were fleeing in panic from the 50-plus scarlet beetles. Without communication, the commander of the 126th Regiment shouted through the loudspeaker, "Prepare for battle. 2nd Battalion, 3rd Battalion, 7th Battalion, heavy machine guns, open fire. Rockets ready. Artillery ready." As the heavy machine guns roared and rockets whooshed, the crowd trampled over each other, fleeing to the nearest neighborhoods. Despite the fierce firepower, the scarlet beetles advanced rapidly. Except for a few hit by rockets, most beetles only had a few dents or holes in their shells from the heavy machine gun fire. The beetles' casualties were minimal. When they cut into the crowd like harbingers of death, screams of the dying filled the air. A nimble scarlet beetle easily dodged a rocket and a tank shell, crashing into the military convoy. Standing atop a tank, it spewed green liquid from its mouth, rapidly corroding the tank's exterior. This beetle emitted a red glow, tearing open the corroded tank shell with its scythe-like legs and pincers, biting the resisting tank soldier to death. Chu Yunsheng admired these soldiers' fighting spirit. If he were one of the tank soldiers, he would have been terrified and fled long ago. Taking a deep breath, he quickly sealed the frost talisman onto the powerful crossbow he had bought 3 months ago at a high price. According to the ancient book, this modified crossbow could harness the world's energy, shooting powerful ice arrows that were particularly effective against fiery creatures like the scarlet beetles. Regrettably, not knowing what kind of monsters would appear, he had wasted a lot of energy creating the less effective fire weapon talisman. Only recently had he managed to make the frost talisman. Urgently needing to seal the talisman onto his weapon, he saw that 3 scarlet beetles, following the fleeing crowd, were closing in on his building. Unless the ancient book glowed again, the 3 beetles would undoubtedly reach him. He had no idea when the book would glow again and couldn't rely on it. He had to depend on his preparations. If he fought the beetles up close, without the ancient book glowing, his chances of survival were 0. Therefore, he had to keep the enemy outside. A modern crossbow was his best choice.